Today we're going to be looking at making our clay birds, and then we're going to go into our multimedia aspect after we fire our birds and add on all of our ribbons and feathers and yarns and strings and all of that kind of stuff. But first, we want to just look at making our bird with some basic shapes. You're going to have a hunk of clay that we give you today, and what you want to do first is with your hand, you want to kind of push that clay out, flip it over, and just flatten it out a little bit. Don't push so hard that it gets really thin. You want it to be about pinky thick, or as I like to put it, pencil thick. So sometimes to help myself out, what I do is I put 2 pencils down before I get my rolling pin. And then as I roll with my rolling pin, it can't go any lower than those pencils. Yep, it can only stop where the pencils are. So I know it's the right thickness if I use those pencils as my guidelines. Let's stick in a little bit. I'm going to roll it just a little bit more this way. Okay, so now that's about pinky thickness because that's about how thick a pencil is. If you look at it from the side, see it's thinned out quite a bit from that hunk that we started with. The first shape that we want to cut with our cutting tools, which might be a knife for you or one of our clay cutting knives, I like to use a toothpick, is going to be a semicircle. And a semicircle should have naturally formed on the ends of this when you rolled it out. So the easiest way to do it is, I like this nice fat one because I like fat birds. I'm just going to cut a straight line all the way down like that. And now I have my bird's body. That's going to be my first shape. And then the next thing I'm going to need is a bird head, which I kind of like to be a circle. So I'm going to use this round side, already kind of like a circle, to cut out a circle with my toothpick. It's going to be my bird's head. What else am I going to need? Yeah, a beak. And you can see on here we already have some that look like a beak. So I'm just going to cut those straight off to be a beak for my bird. What else? What else? We're not going to do tail feathers because we're going to add those with our multimedia. Same thing with our feet. What else could we add? A wing. We could do a wing right about here, and I like to do my wings, let's see, a teardrop shape. Let's see if we can figure out how to make one of those. I come down and go this way, and then I stop because it's really hard to go like this. It's an odd angle for my arm, so I'm just going to start at the top again and go back down over here. So I can move this out of the way, and now I have a wing for my bird. I could also add a little eyeball, but I don't know about you guys, I really like to use googly eyes. I'm a googly eye fan. So instead of adding an eyeball, I'm going to just use my eraser on my pencil to add a little hole for where I'm going to put the glue for the googly eye later on. Now, we're going to attach all of these pieces together. When we attach clay to itself, if we don't do what's called scoring and slipping, as the clay dries, it kind of locks in when you score and slip like this, and as it dries, it can pull apart as the water evaporates. We want to make sure that doesn't happen, because if that happens with our birds, then they start falling apart in the kiln, and we have to glue them all back together, and it's just a big mess. Easiest way to score and slip is to take your little pointy tool. Again, I like to use toothpicks, nice and easy. On the back of your item that you want to stick someplace else, because we're going to stick this over here to the body, we're going to score. That means you're going to scratch lines in there that are kind of like a checkerboard pattern. That one first. And then I know I'm going to put it right about there. So I'm going to poke a couple little holes that are my guideline holes. So when I move it, see now I can see my guideline holes. I know that if I score it here, I have to score it in those same places over here, because what that does is that creates a locking system, kind of like your zipper on your jacket, that puts these 2 pieces together and doesn't let go. So in here, you're going to dip 1 finger, get some water on it, rub it on here, maybe 2 fingers if you have a larger space like me, and you want it to just be shiny. You don't want it to be dripping and super squishy. Just be shiny like that. You're going to put it right down on top of that other scored area. This is the slip part. Sometimes you can add some clay, mushy clay in between there. I like to push. You can see some of the little bubbles coming out. That's good. We want those air bubbles to come out of there. Don't want them in there, because if you get air bubbles and this goes in the kiln, they're going to explode, and then you will have an exploded bird. So I want to make sure that's pretty firmly attached. I'm gently pushing down on there. See, it's still got a couple little bubbles coming out. Make sure they don't stay in there. Here we go. And now if I turn this sideways, you can see it's attached. It's not going anywhere. It's going to stay there. The next thing I want to put on my head if my head's going here, not all of it is touching. So I'm just going to be working on this area right up here. And same thing on the bird head. We're just going to be scoring this area over here, like this. Adding our water to there, and then gently pushing down just like we did last. So the next part of this again is we're gonna add the beak. And if I'm gonna do the beak right here on the edge, like if I wanna curl it, I can bend it around a little bit. Same thing though, see how this easily that pulls off? I need to score that first. Same thing. And then I'm gonna score the edge of the head really carefully. Get that a little wet, and then push it on. With that wet finger, I can even, look at that, smooth that out so it looks like it's all one piece. That's pretty cool, isn't it? It's not really one piece, don't be fooled. It's still two pieces, so it could crack if you didn't do that scoring and slipping in between. But this will give it the illusion of being all one piece of the bird. So now that I have all of this part done, where I'm going to be adding in our multimedia later, our ribbons and everything for like these big gorgeous tail feathers like we saw in the picture, and the feet, I need to make sure I'm poking holes in there, right? So you need a minimum of 6 holes. You're going to put in whatever poking object you have. It might be a toothpick like mine. If it is, you need to make sure you make those holes a little bigger, because some of our ribbons are really thick and they're not going to go through here if you don't have a big enough hole. I'm just very gently drawing an O shape to open up those holes like that. And of course, I went 2 down here for the feet. I could also try using a pencil to make sure that I have a bigger hole if it's easier for you to grip onto. And when I do that, I turn the pencil as I'm pushing through and being careful not to rip holes down here, because if I do that, then obviously the strings aren't going to stay. And then I like to do holes up here in the head, because then I add ribbons up here, kind of like the cockatoos and the cockatiels, so that they have some out there. I know other people I've known have done it in the wings. Then I want you to carefully turn this over. See how the holes are really rough on the back? Go ahead and take the pencil and kind of smooth them out. Don't let them disappear. I'm going to keep them open, but you can smooth down some of that roughness, or you can just use your finger. If it's too dry, you can get your finger just a little wet in your bowl. But you see, you can smooth out those little areas. And of course, no art project is complete without putting your name on it someplace. So we do that on the back of here. I would put Mrs. Congdon. You guys would just put your first name, last initial, and then your class code. And everybody's class code is going to be, whatever grade number you are, dash, and then your teacher's initial. So if I was in, Mrs. Anderson's class, I would do 1-A is what it would look like. So since I'm in my own class, I'm going to put C. But you guys are going to put your grade level, dash, and then your teacher's initial, plus your name. And then these are going to go over on the drying cart, over where I'm pointing now. You can see that. And we're going to put them in the kiln and fire them. I'll see you next time after we fire to see how to add all the extras in.